Okay. All right. Welcome to What's My Thesis. I'm your host, Javier Proenza. Every week, my guests and I share the answers we found to the questions we have. Join us as we explore and expand our worldview and ask, What's my thesis? And today, my guest is Nikki Ochoa. We know each other via Instagram. I didn't want. The first question that comes to mind is, do you know Abby Martin personally, or are you guys just Instagram friends? Because when I saw that you, I don't know, when I realized that she was following you, I was like, holy shit, she's like a serious journalist, yo, and she's an artist too. So are you guys like homies, or did she just like your vibe? Because you do also have a very engaging Instagram presence.
Well, thank you. It's actually kind of funny. Abby, okay, I met Mike at a party, and
Okay.
it was like Gemini season, like 3 years ago or something. And at that birthday party, Mike invited me to his birthday party where I met Abby and then the rest of them. And I actually didn't know of their work until afterward. People were like, oh my God, like, and then I saw the video, his like speech, stuff like that. So I really just met them through partying in LA.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's interesting. But I mean, it also seems like you have a similar sort of uh, world outlook, right? Like it's not
Hmm.
like you're not pro imperialism, right?
No, I think that's probably why we got along at these parties anyway, just like talking. And at the time, I think it was like the rise of like limes and bird scooters. So Mike and I started talking about that, and
Mm.
then just continuing. I honestly don't remember what we were talking about at his birthday party, but I do know that we were into some serious conversations very late into the night.
Crazy. Well, he's a big
Mhm.
activist. He's a former soldier. I think he was. I forget what war it was, and she is a badass journalist. So anyway, I'm just really impressed with her work, and really excited that I know she's kind of like a dream guest because she's an artist as well. So
Mhm.
I was like very impressed just because like I think very highly of her. So it's just
Mhm.
Instagram's a funny thing.
It
But
is.
anyway, let's talk about you a little bit. You are an artist, right? And I see that you travel a lot, which is kind of dope. You don't live a van life. I think you also have a place, right?
I do. Yeah. I just moved to downtown Los Angeles.
Okay. And do you travel as an artist? In what capacity? Do you wear other hats as well?
Yeah, I travel as an artist. I recently was in Atlanta and we had a show. Um, that was really great. And I think a lot of times I'm traveling for pleasure and I just happen to have a lot of friends, thankfully. And we'll say, okay, what can we do here? Like, what's happening? And recently it came together really well in Atlanta, but that's kind of that's kind of where I'm coming
You're
from.
traveling with friends, or you have a lot of friends across the country?
Both, yeah.
Okay. How did you
Mhm.
meet so many people? Did you grow up here in California,
I
LA?
grew up in Atlanta
Okay.
until I was like 11, and then I moved to Los Angeles. And
And go ahead.
oh yeah, and I've lived in Los Angeles since I was like 11 years old. My family
So,
is from here.
okay, cool.
Hmm.
Do you, but you still have some level of roots in Atlanta, obviously.
Yes, and it's interesting because it's like people that I've known since I was in kindergarten, but haven't like kept in contact with really, except like through Instagram. And then we see each other, like, we like what each other's doing or putting out there, and we'll connect. And then I meet their friends, and it is nice.
Wow. Um, yeah, I don't have necessarily anybody that I went to kindergarten with, so that's a pretty mind blowing kind of like relationship. I've always been sort of envious of that sort of idea of people that grew up each other around each other. Although maybe is it ever burdensome when people know you too well or know you at a phase and you like and they talk to you a certain Like you're a certain person. Does that ever get weird or no?
Oh, definitely. Well, I think I had a level of being removed from that because I did like leave the people that I grew up with in kindergarten when I was 11. So I had
Mm,
this nostalgia to reconnect, probably more than anyone else who like saw these people throughout high school would have felt. But
yeah.
to me, it's like this mysterious, magical thing because I really hadn't seen them for like years and years and years until I was an adult. But it is interesting too because it's more so the people I thought I would be friends with forever who have become like homophobic or just like, we've definitely grown apart.
And is that you bring up homophobia? Are you queer? Is that, or you just don't jive with people that are homophobic, or both?
Both. Yeah,
Okay.
both.
I mean, that's fair.
Hmm.
I don't really think I hang out with anybody that, definitely nobody that openly expresses homophobia. So I can
Yeah.
understand that sentiment either way. But it's interesting to, I don't know. I do feel like I do hang out with some people that are like maybe unaware that they're racist. You know?
Hmm. Well,
Or
mhm.
go ahead.
Oh, I had a like very specific experience when I went to Georgia, like in 2019 with homophobia. Like my old friend, I was staying with her for a wedding,
Hmm.
and the first thing she told me was that, she thought gay people go to hell or something. And it was just like so mind blowing to me. First of all, I was like, what are you even saying? And then also, I'm supposed to be staying with you for the next like 4 nights. And I tried to make it work, but it was just like, that was just like the beginning and it just went downhill from there. So I had to
So
like leave.
it was a symptom of bigger issues of like someone being maybe a hateful person, just in
Yeah,
general.
yeah. That was just like one part of it. I mean, yeah, it just got worse and worse. But it definitely tipped me off.
I also think it's funny when you go back to like a place that you grew up in and you start to see people that you haven't seen in a long time, and like relationships evolve and people grow up into each other into like a sense of being. And it was always funny to me who ended up being like kind of the nerdy kids as they grew older that were like when we were kids we were just kids, right?
Hmm.
But as they
Hmm.
grew up, like maybe they were still friends with everybody, but they were like maybe not included in the same way that they were when we used to be kids. And then I remember in the US that was like definitely a thing where I knew people that were like, yeah, that guy used to be alternative and now he's like heavy into, you know, like in Miami there was booty bass. So he was
There
like
were what?
there was booty bass music. Like it's like
Oh.
yeah. So we used to call those guys bassers. And
Mm.
so like people would just change their genre, change up their genre or like their style and hang out with a completely different crew of people. It's funny like that. But,
Hmm.
to move away from the homophobia.
Hmm.
But like and maybe back more into the nostalgia. Um well, cool. Did you have a topic that you wanted to talk today or do you want to just shoot the shit?
Yeah, I don't really have a topic.
You don't really have a topic? Okay.
No.
Well, like what kind of stuff are you usually the topic is to kind of gauge interests and stuff. So, I mean,
Hmm.
what are you really into? Like what and it doesn't have I think that like maybe like it could be something like Fast and the Furious. I'm not telling you to pick something on the fly, but I'm more interested in like whatever weird sort of like interest you have that maybe informs your art practice in the sense of like how the interests overlap or the way you engage with it overlaps, but maybe is not necessarily like, you know, are what. Let's talk about your work a little bit, and then maybe see if I can pick up something there.
Okay. Yeah, I actually do have something that um definitely like motivates my art practice and just like the way
Hmm.
that I live in general. And it's interesting too because today is the anniversary of the day that my cousin died by suicide, who's a victim to
Hmm.
suicide. So that I have been thinking of all day. And it's actually something that's really informed my art since. Um, I made this large sculpture in the Mojave Desert that's based off of this sculpture installation called the Wind Phone that a Japanese artist who lost his cousin in a tsunami made. And basically it was just a place for people to go, and there's it's a phone booth in his garden, and they can talk on the phone with like anyone in the spirit realm or who's gone. So it was based off that idea, and I created this like gazebo. We built it, like some friends and I. It's 10 feet tall in the Mojave, and it's like this permanent structure that anyone can go to, and it's been opened. We opened it with like a series of movements and with some trinkets that like hold sentimental value.
So movements for the art layman is like basically like you guys were doing performance work around it to sort of activate it.
Yeah. So I have, it was very simple, like 8 counts. I have one friend who does choreography. And she helped us she just taught everyone there, like just simple movements that, I don't have like a background in dance or anything. And my eyes have been opening to like what dance is and choreography is, but just like, something that just kind of opens your body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So is that,
what?
So is that, are you, what's the interest? I guess
The
I'm
connection?
trying to codify, or I'm trying to like connect. I mean, it's obviously there, but I want to get like a better, like I want to have a more explicit understanding of what you're pursuing in terms of like because obviously maybe it's not therapy, right? Because that is a little bit much, but obviously there's a way of thinking about it that is showing up in the work, right? So you're thinking about communicating with someone that's not there. Are you a believer in spirits and ghosts and stuff, or is it more of like speaking into the void, kind of like venting, sort of feeling like you wanted to connect?
Yeah, I think it's more literal. Not really just like screaming into the void or anything, but creating a connection with your ancestors who can be, it doesn't have to be someone who preceded you, but any kind of spirit that you feel familial with or that inspires you. And basically linking like the physical reality, or like what we take as I'm driving on the freeway, la la la, our daily lives with something grander, like a spiritual world, and just like being more in touch with our own spirituality or metaphysical kind of understandings.
So explain your metaphysical understanding a little bit to me, because I find all this stuff interesting. I definitely think it's like I think it's funny when people are like evangelical atheists, right? Because I think this is such a human area of like contemplation, right? Because we're all gonna die eventually, right? And we all have to kind of come to terms with that shit in some level, and maybe try to find a little bit of meaning. So, you believe? Have you ever had like ghost experiences straight up like that? Are we talking like I'm more interested in ghost hunting and shit like that, so that's why I'm making it about that. I don't mean to like condescend at all.
Sorry,
but do you like? Is that how you think of the spirit realm?
I don't really think of it as ghosts, but I think there are spirits. Like when I moved into the place I live downtown, there was definitely like this pesky kind of poltergeist happening there. But my understanding broadly, I've used this metaphor since I was like in high school. But basically, imagine a woman who's pregnant, or a person who's pregnant, and they have this life inside of their body. And the embryo just catches glimpses, like small, like whispers of the outside world. So say someone's singing, they can hear it, but I'm sure it's like through the walls of their like parents' body. And they have an understanding of the world they're about to be born into, but it's not quite clear, right? It's a different experience. Then you're born and you emerge into this world that you've only caught glimmers of before. And I think the same thing happens when you die. So we're living now, and maybe like everyone has stories of like these little things that have happened that they can't quite explain, or feelings they get. And I think that's the same kind of thing as what happens like in the embryo. You have like a very, not diluted, because it's not really negative, but you have a sense of this outside world, this other realm. And then when you die, you're birthed into it and things become more clear, the spiritual. Yeah.
What do you think happens before you're born?
I think that it's probably.
Go ahead.
What? No, what?
I have a bad habit of like answering the question that I ask. So what's your answer? And then I'll tell you mine.
I think that it's a similar space, being where you are before you're born and where you go after this life or whatever. It's kind of this like cosmic possibility realm.
Have you thought more about how then so like then essentially we're talking about something breaking through a veil, right? Like when we have these like ghost-like experiences. That was like jazz hands, but intended as quotation marks. So then how do you feel about that? Because there's actually some talk about that, which I think is interesting. And what I was going to suggest is that my answer that I interrupted you with, and I apologize, is the idea of reincarnation, which essentially is sort of like what you were saying, but I like the way you said it better rather than the way I was going to say it. But so like, what do you think of that then? What do you think of like, or maybe like, can you describe a little bit of this poltergeist experience? Because those are fun.
Okay, yeah. Well, reincarnation, I mean, I think if you need to, or if you want to, you can come back. And I have feelings like that family members of mine will come back as a child of my sister or mine. You know, not completely, but like essences, parts of them, or maybe I don't know. But this poltergeist that was in my apartment, I had some friends. This is a little not PG or whatever, but is that fine?
I don't know where this is going.
Okay. No, I mean just a little. Like my friends were hooking up. Like when I first moved in there, I wasn't sleeping there yet, so I would leave at night because it's kind of like on the edge of downtown, and it was a little spooky living there by myself at first. So whatever. But I totally
understand that.
Yeah. So two of my friends were like hooking up, whatever, and I was like, okay, bye, I'll see you guys later. Like, have fun, whatever. And they told me that like some clothing had come off at one part of the like space, and the next, I don't know, an hour later or something, they found that particular piece of clothing in a totally different spot. Like, and they were like, oh my God, you have like a horny ghost in your apartment building. And I was like, what? But I had felt it too. I had felt like a strange energy, and like I would be there by myself and things would fall, and then I'd go and look at where it sounded like it fell, and nothing had fallen. And then like other people in the building had also told me that the energy was strange in that apartment before I moved in, and that they felt it had definitely changed. And then someone else moved in, and they were like, do you think this place is haunted because weird stuff is happening? And I was like, oh yeah, this place is like, it is, like, here's some sage. And I think the building was like, it's like 100 years old. It was like built in like 1920 something. And I think there's just like casual energies that exist there. And apparently the person who had lived there before me had a really hard time. Like their mother had just died and they were not doing so hot. And so it was definitely like there was an energy there.
Hmm. And that's really interesting. Is there like a specific part of the house that, or of the apartment that you experience weirdness in?
Um,
Or is it just, please tell me it's not the whole thing.
yeah, no, it was kind of the whole place, but I saged all of it except for the top. It's a loft.
Okay.
So, um, and the loft I didn't sage at first. And so whenever I would walk past the ladder, it would creak in this weird way until I finally like gathered enough courage and just saged the whole place. And it really did change after that. But
So you were afraid to go in the loft? That's why you weren't sleeping upstairs there as well,
it was
or?
kind of, yeah.
Okay. No, that's
Yeah.
fair. Dude, spaces can be weird. If there's anything that you learn from like just like live, I don't know if you've ever gotten to go to like one of the places in Europe that has like uh, buildings as propaganda, where it's like, like fascist architecture and whatnot, and all these different things that are based on classical architecture, which is based on inspiring awe because it's all based on stacking people. But spaces are
Mm.
definitely have weird energies for sure, and
Hmm.
they can make you feel a certain way. But that's cool. I'm glad that the sage made the problem go away because that
It
shit is
did.
fucking, yeah, that shit is scary as fuck. Like like the idea of I've been in places where there's hallways that make you feel very uncomfortable, right?
Hmm.
But like that's it's a weird experience because then you feel like you're safe in this room, but like you're still kind of a prisoner, right? It was there was a hallway, and then there was a room here, and then a
Oh.
room on this way, and then a bathroom, right, at this person's house, and then at my brother's house, there was also a hallway. Hallways tend to have that weird kind of vibe where like
Hmm.
but I remember my mom telling me a story of like how they would lived in a place where I forget the details, so I don't want to elaborate too much and embellish the story, but basically my brother just being like susto, like about how he was scared of like over there that shit's scary, you know?
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think there's definitely the possibility that, which kind of is not an argument against what you're saying. It fits what you're saying a little bit. Is like sort of there's the idea of transdimensional beings, right? Where where like you're interacting with these things that you can't really, your brain can't fully process, so it glitches out or it fills in the gaps as you're experiencing this thing, and that's pretty interesting because I definitely like, I don't know, I mean, I know there's a lot of like charlatans in history in terms of like uh are you in LA right now?
Yeah. Do you hear like? Actually,
No,
I'm. I'm.
I just noticed that it's dark.
Oh yeah. Where are you?
I'm in LA too.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I,
I'm in
ju- I
LA.
just it just confirmed my assumption that you were in LA. But
Hmm.
but yeah, the idea that you're experiencing these like beings that are trying to maybe communicate with you that can't fully do it. I'm a little, I think that that's a little bit more in the realm of like what's it called? Um, aliens and UFOs, right? Where
Mm.
that's sort of this guy J. Allen Hynek, but I think it could also easily apply to like these weirdly spiritual and sort of intense, like scary things. Have you so not to get like too dark, but I also had a friend who committed suicide. So I don't want to I don't want to like shy away from that
Hmm.
entirely.
Hmm.
But the she shot herself like on New Year's Day, which is a
Mm.
weird anniversary for it, but it's also, I'm sure, a very common one.
Hmm.
But So like, how long ago did this happen?
2 years ago today.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. So
it's
it's
just horrible.
no, it's pretty recent too. So I can definitely understand how weird that shit makes you feel. What
Yeah.
was it? Go ahead. Say what you were gonna say.
Oh, just that, like, basically, it's like the worst thing, right? For me and my family, and just horrible, like tragedy, bad, 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 and um, basically, like transforming that energy is what motivates me and my work. Um, because it's like, well, my cousin was 18 years old and wanted to be a filmmaker. Big dream was to live in Los Angeles. I had, visions of us like what, once he was 18 or like could live anywhere, uh, showing him around LA, showing him what I know, making work with him and all of this kind of stuff. So, and we connected really well. He was the other like artist in the family. But anyway, what I think now is just that, you know, honoring him and living as well as I can
Hmm.
to make art. And like at the end of the day, like nothing really matters that like I probably think of or that stresses me out or oh I wish I was here, what I should be doing this, la la la. It's like it's kind of like this freedom in a way and also this motivation. Yeah.
What's sorry? What's the freedom?
The freedom is that there's this kind of like irreverence that comes from that. Like if someone like is victim to suicide, it's just like over. So I don't know exactly. It's just like this zero negative space and then like well that could happen or like on the flip side just like anything could happen.
Hmm.
Kind of how I see it. I don't know, I'm talking in
No, I
like
get. It
but
sounds like it's sort of like a worst case scenario, but I think it is. I think what you're saying makes sense to me. I don't know if I can um, verbalize it because I think it's a difficult thing, but
mhm.
I definitely understand, especially the idea of their apps. Just there's absence now, right? Like
Mhm.
because it's like kind of abrupt and catches you off guard, and but I was actually thinking about it. I think even today while I was at work, just sort of the idea that like there's this sort of tendency for us to think of ourselves in the moment, even though we aren't in the moment with all of like the baggage, right? And I get what you're saying in the sense that like to me, all of her bullshit doesn't fucking matter, right? Like
Mhm.
I knew her a long time, and she was a very close friend of mine, and to the point where like we would irritate each other because we would try to call each other on each other's bullshit and shit like that. But it was, it's like to me, none of that shit matters in the long run, right? Like that's not what I remember, and that's not what her life amounted to.
Mhm.
So I get the idea of how that is sort of like a little bit of a release in terms of I see what you mean about freedom, right?
Yeah. And it's like freedom too because it's like wow this like horrible thing has happened and this like great huge tragedy but I've experienced it, I've lived, we're continuing to live, and it's almost like I'm not afraid,
Yeah.
because like going through such pain and like it puts things in perspective. It's like, if something happens and you're like, well, did anyone die? Like, no, we're fine. And if someone does die, then um, somehow my family is continuing, and like so many people do.
No.
So, yeah.
Do you mind me asking how old you are?
Oh, yeah. I'm 28.
You're 28. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, it's interesting. Do you feel like you've been more, were you traveling this much before? Is this part of like that, or were you always like that?
I was always like that. I was always like that because let me see what happened. Yeah, I just always really wanted to travel and, you know, ever since I graduated high school, but I didn't necessarily have money to do it. So I would do woofing.
What's that?
Um, woofing is where it's like a website you pay like $30 or I don't know what, but anyway, it gives you a catalog of like organic farms all over the world that have set up this situation where you volunteer your time and work on the farm, and then they give you food and a place to stay.
Hmm.
So you have like kind of a purpose to travel and like means to survive there. Sometimes it's weird. So I've had some weird
I
experience.
definitely want to. Okay, finish what you were saying, and then let's go.
Yeah.
Let's put a pin in that.
Okay, yeah. But it's a great way and just to like travel on like a kind of punk budget. And so anyway, I would do that and then I traveled to Europe. I made a stop motion that got into some Italian film festivals, and my grandmother was really proud of me and paid for my ticket to go to Italy. And then from there, I was just like, wow, the world is insane and huge. And I
Where
worked
in
as a
Italy?
substitute teacher. I went to start. Well, I went to up north, Lake Orta, and then
Okay.
it's like by the border. What is it like the Switzerland? So, yeah, and then
Yeah.
I also went to Sardinia, which they don't like to be called Italy, but it's an island off the coast of Italy, Sardinia, and it's like
That's
technically
Italy. They can
Italy.
fuck off.
Yeah. Wait, what did you say?
I said that
Well,
that's
no, they
Italy.
don't.
They can
They
fuck
don't want
off.
to be. They don't want to be occupied by Italy. Like they're really. I think it's like one of the places where people live the longest, and they're like it's like gorgeous clear water. And anyway, so they have that whole thing happening. But yeah, I worked as a substitute teacher, and I would just use that money to travel, and it was great because I could set my own schedule, so I had the ability to just like take
Yeah.
off whenever.
I just set up myself to have a little bit more. I have one more day of work from home,
Mm-hmm.
so and I'm gonna start taking like vacation days and like because I basically have 4 days off, even though I'm working from home. I like 4 days that I can travel and work,
Mm.
and then come. I just need a fucking laptop.
Oh yeah.
That's the only thing I'm missing. Although I could travel with a monitor, it would be tedious, but yeah. So yeah, that's interesting. So can you like that's really cool. I think that there's definitely something. There's a couple of things that I feel like I'm learning about you that are interesting, which is that you are sort of like I mean, free spirit is kind of a weird word because I don't even know what that means anymore. It might have been canceled as well, but yeah,
No,
because
why?
oh, I don't know. I think maybe it was like a passive aggressive way of calling someone a slut. So
A free
back,
spirit? Really? I
yeah,
had.
like she was a free spirit. That sounds a little bit like boomers may have misused that and not called.
Oh. Mhm.
But I don't know. I don't. Anyway, but it seems like you like ironically very Italian lifestyle of like work to live, not live to work, which I
Mhm.
can definitely get behind. Which I think is the vibe I get from following your Instagram, which is why I wanted you on the show because I'm like, damn, I want to figure out how that's working for how you're making that happen. So that's really interesting. Is that called agritourism or is agritourism a separate thing?
I don't
You
know.
don't. Okay, then it's
No.
probably not. Because we did agritourism when I was a kid, but
Mhm.
we didn't have to work. We just got to stay at farms, which I think is maybe a different thing. But
Mhm.
so do you like? I would say that also my friend Julie was a free spirit. Do you have like down times? Do you have to like pull yourself up sometimes in terms, or are you mostly a sunny person? because I can't tell. You're very I just can't, like, you're very sweet and very nice and pleasant, and obviously people don't lead with their darkness. But since we're talking about suicide and it's
Mm,
usually somewhat related to like physical chemistry, which is genetic. I'm
hmm.
wondering, do you have like moments of like despair? I guess is the best way.
Yeah, I definitely have moments of despair.
Okay.
I would consider myself someone who is like aligned with, this like awe-inspired feeling of like of for life. I
Uh
am
huh.
I am excited and passionate, and I feel like I've always been energized by life. As a child too, I remember being a kid and being like amazed. But um, I definitely do have, down times or times when I'm like, I should be productive, and why am I being so lazy? I'm just looking at my phone, or like, staying up really late. But I'm having fun or whatever. But
But that has that ever
loneliness.
lasted for like months at a time where you just can't get out of bed, kind of thing?
Yeah, so I think one of my biggest vices is like romance. And for like a decade of my life, even longer actually, I was in these really long relationships. And I didn't like this is the last like couple years is the first time I've been single in so long. And maybe that's like how I've been growing and traveling and doing whatever the hell I want, because I finally haven't had like super serious relationship happening. And these super serious relationships were often with like controlling people. So
Hmm.
that's part of it. And yeah, I've been super depressed before because I was in a relationship that was not serving me, but somehow I thought I was in love. And maybe I was, but it was like wrong, bad, ill.
Mm.
Yeah. And there was one, whenever something like I was controlled by these relationships. So
Yeah.
when they were not right, like my heart, I would feel my heart like sink,
Hmm.
or um, I couldn't get out of them because I didn't want to feel bad. I didn't want to feel that depression. And then they would like eventually we'd break up for like a couple of weeks, and I couldn't get out of bed. And my friends would be like, "Oh, you look really skinny." And I'd be like, "Oh, thanks." But really it was because I was like super depressed. And then um but yeah, I mean, I'm not in anything like that anymore, and I haven't been for years. So that's great. But that really, like, after I finally broke up with this person, um, there was this period of time where I was just like learning so much so suddenly about the outside world. I realized that I hadn't like immersed myself in culture at all. It was just like a one on one culture that I had with whoever I was in a relationship with. And
Uh-huh.
then I met my best friend now, who is a couple years younger than me, and introduced me to like everything Gen Z was about. And I was like, whoa, like, holy shit, you're blowing my mind. And that's still happening. I had a friend from Atlanta come visit this last weekend, and they are probably like 21, 22, something like that. And I was just like, how the fuck are you so smart and like know all this stuff about fashion and music and like insane, like showing me all this music. And it was just like, whoa, I mean, I think that definitely has something to do with the internet. Obviously,
Yeah.
we know this, but yeah,
It's
so I
hard to
have,
find. Sorry, go ahead.
oh no, just, I
No, it's
have
just
had,
hard. Sorry.
well,
You go
just
ahead.
answering your question, like, yeah, I have had like periods of down, and then, when tragedies happen and stuff like that. But I take a lot of inspiration from my family, who like
Mhm.
continues to go on, and just like the overall possibilities of life. It is pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I unfortunately have not had the chemical makeup to live like that way until like maybe 2012.
Hmm.
I really appreciate that though. That's like my mom is a lot like that, where it's like it seems like you're a generally not, and also genuinely happy
Hmm.
person, which
Hmm.
I can appreciate. I mean, people like us need people like you to be around.
Oh.
But it's that's an interesting thing just about like sort of temperament makeups, right? Because I feel like, and also just sort of getting to an age where where you start to notice your patterns and whatnot, and start to realize, like, it sounds like you had a realization that your relationships weren't serving you, and that
Mm-hmm.
you you wanted to take a break and maybe try something a little bit different, which is amazing. Um, which is, like, at a certain point I also had to be like, I need to take medicine because
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately I'm wasting like years and years of my life. But the other thing that I was thinking about in terms of the suicide thing is that, one of the things that I realized is that despite spending years and years and years and years and years being depressed, like, there was a point where I realized that I had been through six different depressions. Like, I was definitely a candidate for suicide prevention and watch, where like where I was at the place where I was talking about it a lot, or
Mm.
I was talking about it as a matter of fact thing, and I sort of figured everybody was in the same place and they just weren't saying it. Like, it's a really weird thing to even look back on, because it's hard to inhabit that space. But I was able to sort of get out of that space without medicine, or actually, I did. I took medicine first, and then got off medicine, and then I got back on, because it took so much effort just to lift my baseline to like a regular level. But
Mm-hmm.
when my friend passed away, I realized, like, despite all of that shit, like, I've never hit that level of despair. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like to just sort of consider and think about how desperate, you know, like that's a fucking serious thing, because we're not talking about people doing cry for helps. We're talking about people who completed suicide, right?
Yeah.
And that is like, that's a level of sadness that breaks my heart to know that people can experience,
Mm-hmm.
despite the fact that I, was in danger of that. I don't think I was ever so like that's the moment where all hope dies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the only solution is to harm yourself. It's fucking crazy. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then you think about just like how, like, I'm really interested, or I really appreciate your perspective on sort of uh, how you process sort of the idea of, because I think I sort of have a similar concept of, like, whatever, when I die, it's at least it's natural, right? you
Mm-hmm.
know so I find maybe a little comfort in talking to you about that, and hearing how you approach it, because at that point, like, how do you resolve that suffering? Like, what would anybody alive have done to tackle that shit, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. That's, you go through, like, as family or friends of someone who has been victims of suicide, you're like, what could I have done? How did I not know? And all of that. And I think that my sister's, she's a social worker, and she's like, this is her like specialty. But basically, what she was saying is that, like, suicide is preventable. Like, it is, it's a victim. You don't, she said the terminology is like, you don't commit suicide, like, you're victim to suicide.
mhm.
So basically, it's just so taboo. It's at this place where it's so, so taboo, where, like, people who are thinking of suicide or suicide ideation or whatever point it is at, like, they're, I mean, I guess they feel trapped, and, like, there's no one to talk to. You don't want to be a burden, or it's like, what the fuck is wrong with you, or something like that. And it's like, you just got to say something, or
Yeah,
like, mhm.
yeah.
Or
I
like
mean,
have, oh, like, as a society, like, I wish as a family we would have, like, there's so many times we're all sitting around at dinner together, and, like, no one's talking about mental health, or just checking in or whatever,
yeah.
and because it's like, that's not something you bring up in our society, like, at dinner table, like, so, but if we did, like, it'd be totally different. Things would be different.
What's your cultural background?
My family is Mexican. We've
Do you speak Spanish at home?
I do not.
You do
No,
not. Okay.
I never learned.
Does anyone speak Spanish at
Yeah,
home?
everyone
Okay.
everyone does. Yeah,
Okay. No
yeah.
judgment. I only speak Spanish because I lived with my grandmother for a while. So
Oh yeah.
otherwise I would have completely lost it. I spoke it. It was my first language when I was a kid, but
Mm,
anyway, the yeah, I definitely agree. I think also sometimes there's people, not to get too dark, but there's people that really do enjoy trolling fucking people with mental health issues, right? Like
mm-hmm,
they know they're going to get a reaction. Sometimes it's going to be a big reaction, especially when you're dealing with people that have bipolar disorder and whatnot. Like, I've seen people just troll fuckers, right?
mm-hmm,
We're artists. We know a lot of people
mm-hmm,
that have these kinds of issues, right? And now you know one more. But yeah, I've definitely the term gaslighting has come to prominence for a reason, which I think is like when I was a kid, that word didn't exist.
right.
It wasn't a thing that like you could call or out or name, and I think that like there's a lot of fucked up shit that people that are struggling with this stuff have to deal with. I think another thing that happens to you is that you like unfortunately when you're depressed you become a bit of a pain in the ass, right? Because there's almost like that was my experience with my friend. She
Mm,
like whenever someone is depressed, they're not easy to be around. It becomes
mm-hmm,
a bit of a task, and I think that that's sort of part of what the disease does to you, right? Like the it's a perception issue or whatever. But it is like you said, it's a really tragic thing, and I think unfortunately the only like my experience is the only way that I've been able to resolve my problems is medicine, and I think
mm-hmm.
that a lot of people are resistant, which goes to what you're talking about in terms of the the stigma. But I had like I definitely remember going to my professor at FIU, Bill McGuire, and like just asking him like, how do you deal with? And I was talking to him just like about how the world was dark and how do you deal with how oppressive, like this was during the Bush years, which
Mm-hmm.
everybody seems to think Bush is a great guy now, but
What?
um, but yeah, like and he was like, dude, I think medicine, and I was like, because I wasn't even talking about depression, I was just talking about how like, and he was just like, dude, like it's fucking obvious, everybody could tell, and like all of my peers knew I was like fucking depressed, right?
Mm-hmm,
It was
mm-hmm.
like I was just radiating that shit, but then how do you intervene? But yeah, that's basically. Then I went and I got on medicine after that. That was the first time. Then I got off of it because I was taking something that was pretty hard on your body,
Mm-hmm.
and I tried to do it without it for a while. And like I said, it was just too much work. Every morning I had to wake up and fight the sadness and the melancholy and
Mm-hmm.
medicine. Like so, I guess what the only thing that I can advocate is like if you want to help somebody, sometimes it's just like the only thing you can do is it sucks you in too, right? Like it can harm you to try to get in and help somebody that's depressed.
Mm-hmm.
Like it can make you sad
Yeah.
if you're always hanging around with somebody that's a bummer.
Mm.
Depression can be persuasive, but yeah. So I don't know, man. I really appreciate this conversation. I appreciate you uh, feeling comfortable enough talking about it because
Yeah.
I obviously
That's
still have my hangups.
well, you got to talk about it. I mean, because otherwise nothing is going to change. And I think like in the case of my cousin, like he didn't make it known to anybody.
Yeah.
Nobody knew. He would just like be on his in his room on his computer or something, and it was like, oh, that's just like teenager stuff or whatever. But we had no idea. And yeah, I think medicine, therapy, talking to people, like whatever helps. It can,
Yeah.
yeah.
I definitely think therapy can help a lot of people. What I realized is, and I've taken a lot of, I've done a lot of talk therapy. What I realized was that I had had six major depressions and I was fucking done. I was like, I'm over this, you know. And it's amazing how much like a medicine can help you feel better. And
Hmm.
I know it's not always that simple because I know with bipolarity, people feel like they lose something
Mm-hmm.
of themselves, which can be intense. And I know that it can be a difficult process because you'll get on a medicine and it'll kill your libido, and then you have to get off of that medicine if you want to fuck it, you know. But now you're feeling not depressed, but you don't want to
Mm-hmm.
fuck.
Mm-hmm.
Ever, sorry. I just remembered that you were like, it was PG. They were hooking up. I'm like, oh my god, I'm so
Oh,
crass.
I don't know. No, no, it's not crass.
I just dropped the first F bomb. It
but
was
but
so.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, just I have friends who take different medications and stuff, and just hearing their experiences, like trying to find the right dosages or the right mixture of whatever. And then I have friends too who, are on medication but like completely dependent on it and aren't so happy about it. Like I think they're relying on the medication without doing like internal work as well. And then like drinking on the medication is like a whole different conversation. But yeah, it's just like finding what works for you, I guess, and being really attentive to what you need and like aware of what works for you.
Yeah.
Like I don't think any one thing is gonna like fix whatever, right? Like it's probably like a combination of things.
And it's a change. It's almost like how people say about diet, right? Like you are gonna
Mm-hmm.
have to like change some friendships and some relationships. You're probably engaged. If you're depressed, there's a chance that you're engaged in some relationships that are not serving you, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like,
For sure.
and that was part of the process for me too. Just like sort of learning how to be okay with myself and not cutting, like not ending, not severing ties with people and burning bridges, but just sort of just being like, this crew is not helping me. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go hang out with them anymore. No, no, like, hey, fuck you, bye bye, and more of like, this is weird. I don't
Yeah.
like the way they talk to me.
Yeah. And then it's amazing because then it's like, okay, what fills in that space is usually better.
Yeah,
Because you're like, well, I can recognize this as something that doesn't serve
as,
me in elevating
as
yourself.
as you have a healthier relationship with yourself, you attract more people, right? Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I remember when I was still in the worst of it, I was dating this woman, and I was hanging out with her, and I was just shocked at how everybody was like so warm to her. And it
Mm-hmm.
was because she was in a good place, and I like we broke up. She dumped me, and she had every right to, because like this was like a long term back and forth thing, and I was in a bad place,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the last time that we broke up. But like it was a long distance thing. But yeah, I still think about that because I was like, because it's like now I'm on the receiving end of that sometimes, right? Where I'm walking around and people are like, "Oh, you seem like a pleasant person." I was like, "It's a lot of work." I used to discuss people.
Oh my gosh.
No, not that bad.
Yeah, you're super pleasant and friendly. Thank
Thank
you
you so
for,
much.
yeah.
Well, I really appreciate your time. I guess we're wrapping up around an hour. Do you have anything that we can promote for you? I know that you're very active. I definitely want to invite you to come out to the. There's going to be, and everybody that's listening, there's going to be High Beams is doing a Halloween party at the top
Ooh.
of the Bendix building. So if you guys are in town, you should come
Oh.
check that out. It should be a lot of fun, and there's a lot of people out there that just from that are part of Monte Vista Project and all of those. Like there's everybody from the Bendix tends to attend those things, so it's a fun like little spot to hang out. And since it's all artists, everybody gets in costume and they're all weird.
That's
Which
so
is
fun. I live right next to the Bendix building actually.
oh,
Like
perfect. Yeah.
like a street away or so. But when is that? Like on Halloween?
My understanding is it's the 30th and the 31st. But yeah,
Oh.
man. Anyway, what can we promote for you?
Let's see. Okay, well, I whenever I'm doing stuff, I usually put it on my Instagram, which is
Mhm.
Vomit Child. So,
Which, god damn, you got some balls on you.
well, actually, I don't even remember making that name. It just like, yeah, it just
That's
like
why I
I
thought
tried
you
to
were a
sign up.
Zoomer. I was like,
That's why you thought I was a Zoomer. That's
yeah, it was
fun.
like cynical Gen Zer. Like, I think
No,
there's some. I
you
think
what?
when you're a kid, you're more like I used to be a lot more fuck you,
Mm-hmm,
and more like into that kind of vibe. And now
mm-hmm.
I'm not as I'm getting older. I'm like, let's not put out anything that's gonna attract like
That's funny. I mean,
any. Go
I think
ahead.
I did make that when I was like what, like 17 or something. But
It's
I didn't.
great.
Yeah, I mean, I was 17 in like 2010 or something, and
Uh-huh.
I didn't want any social media. I was like, no, 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 I hate this. Like, this is all bad. And then eventually, I was just like, well, what am I? I'm like rejecting some part of something, and
Yeah,
like I want to know what's happening. And you know, I've
it's
met
a
a lot of
great
people.
name.
Oh, thank you.
It's a great name, and it's very memorable. Vomit Child. It's just
Hmm.
very visceral.
I think it came from like in fifth grade. I remember my mom being mad at me, and she's like, "You're a problem child," and I was like, "That is such a hilarious term. Like,
There was
why
a
would
movie
you say?"
named that too.
Oh, that's probably where she got it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But then how did you turn it into Vomit Child?
Well, I think that I was just feeling like really irreverent. I was like, all right, what's the grossest thing I can think of? Like vomit, and it
That
stuck.
that's amazing. And then you do you have a website or anything else like that?
Yes, that was the other thing I was going to say. My website is just my name, nikkiochoa.com. And you can email me from there. And I have like some examples of my work and my poetry, which is needs to be updated, but you can get like, a little bit of a sense.
I think the artist website, unless they're huge and they can pay someone to keep it updated, it's assumed that it's old work.
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the format I think that I go by is like Instagram is the new stuff, and
Hmm.
if you want a full retrospective and see how the artist has evolved, you go to their website.
Go to my website. Yeah, my .com.
Okay, and then I am at What's My Thesis, and we are also on TikTok. Same thing at What's My Thesis, and I'm at Javier Proenza on Instagram. And yeah, we'll check you guys out next week. We'll have another fun episode of talking. Amazed based on our interactions that we didn't talk about politics once. By the
I
way.
know. Well, I'm kind of like, I don't know how much I want to say of that because I have some. We can meet again if you'd like. But
Yeah,
yeah.
no, well, that's the other thing. It's like the Abby Martin like made me feel very comfortable saying things to you on Instagram that
Mm.
I would feel like might trigger somebody else. Where I'm like, oh, okay, she's at least down. She's at least down with Abby, or at least Abby doesn't find her objectionable. In terms of your
Mm.
politics.
Yeah, we can definitely let's continue that.
Yeah, no, I'm always down to talk politics, but I'm really making an effort to be a better podcaster, and I always bring it up on people that I disagree with,
Mhm.
which is like a little aggressive of me. But anyway, thank you guys for listening, and I will see you next week. What did you think of our conversation? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out our merch store. Special thanks to our patrons. To become a patron, go to patreon.com/whatsmythesis. All the links are in the description below.